Here in Berlin, Mohrenstraße, or Moor Street, has been at the heart of intense political debate for decades. Postcolonial activists and organizations say the word Moor is derogatory and racist towards black people. They've been advocating for the city to rename it. Earlier this month, they got their wish. Our reporter Nehal Johri was there at a ceremony in central Berlin as the street became Anton-Wilhelm-Amo-Strasse in honor of Germany's first African-born scholar.
The moment when Mohrenstraße, bleeped by Berlin's black community to M Street, ceases to exist. Post-colonial activists have been campaigning for more than 2 decades to change its name.
I'm elated. It's taken so long and there's been so many attempts, but now it's done. We are allowed to rename the street has been renamed, and it's just a really beautiful happy end.
The new Anton-Wilhelm-Amo-Strasse pays tribute to Germany's first black scholar. Amo was born in 1703 in what is now Ghana. He was enslaved as a child and forcibly taken from Africa to Europe. Later, as a philosopher in Germany, he wrote about the rights of Moors.
To have him being remembered here in Berlin, which plays such a huge role in Europe, is really something special, and I think it's something we can build on now. I mean, this is really a change in memory culture, I would say.
Close to 300 people gathered in central Berlin to mark the event on the 23rd of August, a day carefully chosen to correspond with UNESCO's International Day for the Remembrance of the Slave Trade and its abolition. At first glance, this may appear to be about one street, one name in Berlin, but it is symbolic of a much wider debate here in Germany, how to reconcile with the country's colonial history in Africa. People here tell me they are tired of African voices being portrayed most predominantly as victims, and of walking on streets like the M Street that carry racist undertones. The word Moor was initially used in colonial Germany to refer to North Africans. Later, it came to mean any people with dark skin tone.
I was born and raised in Germany, and so for a black child, words like these are a constant reminder of degradation. And so for me, it always triggered me.
What's interesting is what clings to this word, 300 or 400 years of enslavement.
But this is a violent discourse, and it's wrong to carry that in a democratic state.
The fight to finally use the name Anton-Wilhelm-Amo-Strasse has been so long because of opposition and legal challenges from a small minority of residents. They say the name was not meant to be racist and is a part of the city's heritage. But the movement gained momentum in 2020, sparked by a tragedy far away in the United States.
That was the Black Lives Matter movement, definitely. It was the death of George Floyd. People came to realize that racism is also part of our country here in Germany because people didn't talk about it. You could see that institutions had to confront themselves with racism. They had to look at the structures, they had to look at the people and see whether they can change measures so that people would feel more comfortable at work, at school, in their everyday life.
Such safe spaces are slowly being carved out in Germany. But there is a long, long way to go. More than a dozen other Mohrenstraßes exist in this country alone, and countless others with controversial names that are fueling public debate.
And joining me now is the political scientist and senior fellow at the Africa Policy Research Institute, Joshua Kwesi Aikins. Joshua was at that naming ceremony for the street change in Berlin. Thank you for joining us, Joshua. So firstly, just give us your reaction now that the street name change happened in Berlin, and this was after a lengthy legal battle and decades of campaigning by activists. How significant would you say this is?
I think this is hugely significant. This was a very joyous moment. It was like a celebration. And as somebody who has joined the advocacy for that renaming around 2002, when this had already been running for quite some time, I can say this has been a long time coming. We have been celebrating the future renaming in that very spot for over a decade now. And so it was really nice to finally see it come to fruition. This is significant for two reasons. One, a racist term has now vanished from public space there, but also significantly, we've been able to shift the perspective of commemoration away from, racist terminology to actually highlighting the life and achievement of somebody who came to Germany as an enslaved, deported, and rose to prominence, but not just in science, but also in, fighting for the rights of people of African descent.
And on that note, there, Joshua, what more can you tell us about Anton-Wilhelm-Amo, the black philosopher who the street has now been named after?
Right. So Anton-Wilhelm-Amo was actually deported to Germany as roughly a 7-year-old in 1707. He came to the court of the Duke of Wolfenbüttel, who at the time already had 13 enslaved Africans in his service. And so we assume it was kind of like an experiment. The little Amo was allowed to go to school, and he excelled in school. He was then allowed to study. He excelled in his studies as well. The assumption is that the Duke wanted to test the limits of, the black mind, but then found out that Amo was really quite exceptional. He studied Greek, Latin, medicine, philosophy, history, and excelled in many of these subjects. He actually wrote a dissertation on the rights of black people in Europe and was also an active campaigner in the abolitionist movement. So that tells you that he really combined his scientific degree with, speaking out for the rights of people of African descent.
And as we just heard in our report, more than a dozen other Mohrenstraße still exist across Germany alone. In your view, how can activists now use this momentum to build momentum and spark change elsewhere across the country?
Right. I think this can really be a reference for debates elsewhere, because what we're hearing here is really a tired repetition of the same old tropes. There's a bit of, apologetics for enslavement. Many people do not know that Germany, or in this case Brandenburg, really also partook in Atlantic enslavement, and that the old name, has to be seen in that context. So I think it's really an opportunity for others to say, look, the debate has been had for literally 30 years, and we can now move on and adopt this idea of shifting the perspective of commemoration. I also think it's important to note that there are quite a few important addresses in that street, among them literally the Federal Ministry of Justice. So that, I think, is an address change of huge significance that can hopefully also inspire name changes elsewhere, but hopefully also gives the people in the ministry some.
And just perhaps very quickly, Joshua, the death of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States appeared to produce a moment of reckoning here in Germany. Did that lead to any meaningful progress for your cause as Black Germans?
Well, I think it was a hugely important moment also for us to come together and assess our own situation. For example, as a co-author of the Afro Census, I can point to the fact that we have really looked at the impact of anti-Black racism on Black lives in Germany. I think the main importance of that moment was self-empowerment and the ability to really reckon with our situation and network amongst ourselves to really demand equal rights. I think what we experience now is a bit of a backlash against this. And this is also one of the reasons why this renaming is significant, because we need to really understand the history that gave life to the issues that we're having, but also the opportunities for empowerment that we want to carry into the future.
All right, Joshua Kwesi Aikins, thanks so much. We appreciate that.
Thank you.